Okay, I think so.
The camera connection's okay? Well, that's what you
Because I'm going to stand over here.
That's very.
Ready? Good evening. I hope you all had a nice last week. I had a good last week. We had a good fundraiser. So tonight we're going to talk about quality. To recap last week, we talked about culture and how it impacted our work. We talked about my need to pay attention to my unintended power sometimes, and when we would accommodate culture or when we thought we should break with culture. We talked a little bit about cultural appropriation, and then I hope you understood we were trying for cultural collaboration. So tonight we're going to talk about quality. So we knew from the beginning to have a successful business, we were going to need to have high quality products. In fact, we often receive compliments on the quality of our products, the quality of the weaving or the quality of the construction of complicated things like our toiletry bags. But when we started, there was a lot that we didn't know. We didn't know, for example, how it would work between the backstrap weaving and the footloom weaving. We didn't know what kind of tools or techniques we would need in order to achieve high quality. And we also had to learn about sourcing the right materials because materials make a big difference in your product. On top of that, we had to find ways to measure and set goals for quality. So I had business experience, so I knew that we needed to use some data, but I didn't have any textile experience. So I had no idea at all what kinds of things we were going to measure in order to make sure we had quality. And then there was the other challenge of conveying the standards we might come up with to women, many of whom had never learned to read or write. So we started doing different things, trying different ways. And over time, through trial and error, we came up with a system that we use today that seems to be effective. So we needed new skills. Remember, the seamstresses had been learning to sew. They were learning to sew on pedal machines. Pedal machines are machines where moving the pedals is what drives the machine. And we were using those because the woman I had hired to train the women had recommended them because electricity wasn't very reliable. She was right about the electricity, although it is more reliable now than it used to be. In any case, the women learned to sew. Over time, they became proficient at sewing on the pedal machines. So then I learned that the women really should be sewing on industrial sewing machines in order to produce good quality. The reason is the domestic machines, either pedal or electric, are made to be generalists. So they're made to do a lot of different kinds of things, but none of them really well. Industrial machines are made to do one thing only, and they're made to do it very, very well. So there's lots and lots of different kinds of industrial machines, all designed to do different things. So we found we could purchase a good used industrial machine in a nearby market, a town called San Francisco El Alto. It's about 40 miles from Cajola. And it's an amazing market. Over time, we've discovered we can find it's really our best source for materials and for equipment. It's a huge market that spreads all over this town. A couple of days a week, it's dedicated to wholesalers coming, but really it's open all the time. And the only challenging thing about this market is it isn't organized at all. So you have to go from shop to shop or stand to stand, asking different people for what you're looking for. And eventually you will find it, or you'll find that it doesn't exist at that market. So we found an industrial straight stitch used machine for about $300, and we brought it back and started to work with it. So the women were understandably nervous about using it. They really go fast, so I understood why they were nervous. But little by little, they became proficient at it. And in the end, that's the kind of machine that they prefer because they see it does in fact give better quality results once they've learned how to manage the speed. The next thing I learned, I get to hear all my learnings here. The next thing I learned was cotton is not, cotton that you've woven into a fabric isn't fabric until you've washed it. Because cotton, when you're weaving it, you're pulling a lot of tension into it. And cotton has a memory. So when you wash it, the cotton loses that tension and it becomes soft and pliable. But, so anyway, so we learned that we had to do that. And in some factories, and larger factories, after they weave, they wash the fabric before they sew it. But in our case, we, in most cases, sew it and then wash it. But when we wash it, then it loses that tension and it shrinks. So we deal with that by factoring that shrinkage into our patterns. It's not perfect because each roll of fabric is a little bit different because it's a different set of people that were weaving it. What did you lose? I can tell by...
No, I think you just need to hit this way again. Yeah, it'll go.
Anyway, so we have to accommodate the shrinkage in our patterns. And it's not exactly always the same, but it's close enough, and we aren't making medical instruments, so close enough is okay. Except when you buy a set of napkins from us, you want all those napkins to be the same size. So it does matter to a certain extent. And then losing that tension by washing is not always a good idea. So the women weave beautiful scarves. It's in a weaving design that we call here in the States window pane. The women call it weave a little, leave a little. And it's nice and airy when they finish with it. If we washed that, it would lose all that airy characteristic because losing the tension, all of those cotton threads would fill up all the holes. And so we use a label on our scarves that says, do not wash, dry clean only. So we hired several women to come and wash and iron all of the products that had been built up all the time before I learned we needed to be washing them. And I brought a steam press down from the United States so they could use it to iron. And one of the women that we hired, whose name is Blanca, who happens to be looking like she's washing clothes there, she kept coming to me all the time, showing me this product, it has this problem, this product has this problem, what about this, what about this? And she had these eagle eyes that could pick out every flaw. So I said, I think she's going to be a good quality control coordinator. So I talked to Blanca and asked her, would you like to be the quality control coordinator? And she accepted. So it's much better to have the quality checked right there, right after it's been made, than example, when it gets to the United States, and has incurred all that cost of shipping. And if they catch the quality problems early, she can work with the seamstresses or work with the weavers, and we can correct the errors quickly, maybe find solutions, something that's not working right. So it's a really important position. But that position in Kahola, it's very difficult because the culture of Kahola is you don't criticize your fellow compañeras, your workers. It's not done. And how are you going to show somebody the work that they did wasn't good without criticizing them? So it was a big challenge for Blanca, but she pulled it off. Was it easy? I don't think so, but she did it. And eventually she was considered a part of the team and she was invited to be part of the cooperative. So this is something unusual for Maya Mom in Guatemala because most of the other cooperatives I know, the person that is looking at the quality of the products that the people are handing in is someone outside the community. So they haven't had to face the same thing. But Blanca set that role for us. So our quality control is a member of the community right from within the cooperative. So sadly, for our dream of slowing down migration, Blanca did go to the United States. But she had created a strong role of a quality control coordinator. So she was replaced by someone else. The people, there's been a couple of people replacing her, and they have been women that had more education than Blanca had. So they were more used to using paper. So I, from the beginning, had been making, I had been making spec sheets to show what the product should look like, and nobody had paid any attention to them. So now that we had these quality control coordinators that were used to relying on paper, they started using the papers in order to define. What's the matter?
I'm just trying to get rid of this screen.
I think it worked okay before you were here.
Sorry.
Anyway, they were used to using the paper, so they relied on these spec sheets in order to know what each of the products were supposed to be like. That made the seamstresses use the spec sheets so that they would make sure their work was going to be up to standard when it passed. And that made me have to be better at making my spec sheets. So now they tell me, are you sure you mean this? Is this what it's supposed to look like? But I'm very happy because we are all getting better quality. So the documenting this is important because this is how we set our standards. So we have our standards, but our goal is for the women to be making a fair wage. And if their product isn't accepted or they have to spend more time working on it, then they're earning less than they should. So when a product doesn't meet the quality standard, we try to think about what we can do in order to not lose that time or not lose that product. So sometimes the product comes out, for example, they wove some scarves that were too narrow, or they made some pillow covers that were too small. So sometimes we can decide to make use of that product, that we can, so we could sell a scarf as narrow, we just tell you that's what the size of it is. But we also created on our website something called Charming Accidents. And these are products that they're perfect quality except for the fact they didn't meet the size or color. They were constructed with the wrong fabric, or the fabric was made with the wrong color. Something wasn't according to what we planned, but they're high quality products. And that way people can come to our website and find products at a discount that are of good quality. And if they meet their needs, that can be something cool. Oh, I forgot a big thing. Okay, so then sometimes fabric has been woven with a big error in it. So what, for an example, was we had fabric with green and white that was supposed to be made into aprons, and there was a big flaw down one whole side of the fabric. So we just repurposed the good side of it into things, and in this case, we made Christmas ornaments. I skipped one of my parts. I would like to retreat and retreat and go back to it. I wanted to talk about, so the standards of quality that we set, where did they come from? So they came from the fact that we had, so how they started is we had a customer who we made baby wraps for their, to sell under their own brand. And the baby wraps were 4 or 5 meters long, and they couldn't have errors in it. Well, to expect the footloom weavers to weave 4 or 5 meters of fabric with no errors was not really realistic. And so, if you remember, there was a woman named Lori who helped us in the beginning. Well, she came and helped us in this case again. So she helped us set standards. So the example with the baby wraps is we looked at all the different kinds of errors that could happen and documented that. For example, if there's a small weaving error in a corner, that's okay, it's acceptable. Nothing that would weaken the baby wrap itself was ever acceptable. Other kinds of flaws, we said yes or no or yes or no. So that helped us be clear about what was acceptable, which helps the quality control person, helps the weavers. It helped us tremendously. Then we started to use that system for all of our products. So little by little, they've all gotten documented, and they all got documented on the spec sheets that I was telling you about. Okay. So a very, very important part of quality is what materials we use. So in the beginning, for example, when I had to buy, we needed zippers for some of our products. So I ended up buying the zippers in the United States because it was easier for me to find the color and style of zipper that I wanted here. I have always had huge problems finding anything in Guatemala. And so this was a good solution for me. And by accident, I started by purchasing what are the best quality zippers, the YKK zippers. So all these years I've been schlepping zippers from here to there. But in the last year, we've had a great change because now the women are able to order those same zippers, but from the El Salvador factory. It's always better if they can source their own materials, assuming they're the same quality, because often they're less expensive. They can often get them faster, and at minimum, they don't have to be shipped from the United States, because shipping is very expensive, more so than it used to be, but it's very expensive. So that's really a good idea. But some of the materials that we have, we cannot get in Guatemala. And why? Guatemala's textiles are 14% of Guatemala's exports. They're 9% of Guatemala's GDP. So why can't we get all the materials that we would need if it's such an important industry in Guatemala? The reason is because the industry in Guatemala is dominated by big companies. The majority of them are maquilas. So for those of you who don't know what maquilas are, it's a system of manufacturing where, for example, a company in Guatemala will receive the materials to make something from a company in the United States and will produce the product and then send it back to that same company in the United States. And it exists because of negotiated treaties, and in our case, the Central American Free Trade Treaty, CAFTA, set no duties on a large number of products. And those products are what this system of maquilas works on. And what happens is what they're selling, what the manufacturing companies in Guatemala, the maquilas, are selling is access to very low wages. And in fact, the Guatemala government helps in this by setting the minimum wage for the maquila workers lower than the regular minimum wage for Guatemalan workers, even though the Guatemalan minimum wage doesn't even cover basic necessities in life. Also, the maquilas, they don't even always pay that minimum wage, and they don't always comply with Guatemala's labor laws. In any case, they're big companies, and they contract the materials that they need from suppliers. The suppliers that are manufacturing for the big companies, that's how they do their business. And there isn't a robust economy of small and medium businesses in Guatemala that would be the customers for those products. In the United States, we still have an economy that's full of small and medium-sized businesses. And so that the suppliers here have an incentive, they have a market so that they can sell in smaller quantities a wider variety of things. So here I have access to products in the quantities that we use them in a much wider variety of colors and sizes. And the big problem or the challenge is I still have to get it to Guatemala. There's two products that I can think of that we have to have to buy in the United States. One is the heat-resisting lining that we put in our pot holders. It's only produced here in the United States. And another example is we use suspender clips on our toiletry bags, and we cannot get the right quality or the right color in Guatemala. So those have to be ordered here. And even when we have local sources available, we still sometimes have challenges to meeting our standards. So you can imagine the biggest material that we need is cotton. We buy about 2,000 pounds of cotton in a year. And over time, we've had a series of small-ish vendors, and we've been an important client for them. So those vendors provide us with the yarn that's been dyed to our color specifications. So we have an agreed upon color chart, and the dyes don't bleed. So that's important for us. But another thing that's really important for us is that our dyes are azo-free. And azo has a long name. Azo is its short name. It's a long name for a chemical that is put in dyes to make the colors fix. And it is toxic. So we've always requested azo-free dyes of our vendors. And they've dutifully given us certifications that the dyes are azo-free. However, about 2 months ago, the dyes were tested in a laboratory in Europe, and they had a lot of azo in it. So that became a big challenge for us, but I'm happy to say that we've solved that challenge. And how did we solve that challenge? By another stroke of luck. We were introduced to a vendor that had just started in business about a year ago, but he's committed to azo-free dyes. And so we've met with him, and he's got our color requirements, and we're not buying anymore from the other vendors that we were using, and we're starting to buy from him. And the thing is, when we talk to our vendors about the need to talk to the people that do the dyes for them so that we could work with them to make sure they had the right kind of dyes, they wouldn't introduce us to their dyers. So now they've lost our business, I'm sorry to say, but because we were, by luck, able to find somebody who already was in that business of not using azo dyes. So that's my spiel for tonight about quality. I just want to say the last thing we do for quality in the States, if you buy from us, the last thing that happens to a product is it gets a final quality check that we don't have too many problems anymore. It gets a final touch up with an iron. We package our products carefully in red tissue paper and in a white box and send them off to the customer. So we get a lot of positive feedback for that as well. So that's all for today. And I will see you in 2 weeks because you have vacation and I'm going to run to Guatemala. And I'll see you on the 21st. But I'm happy to answer any questions if I didn't answer everything you were wondering about. Yes.
If you could just kind of go into a little bit about the free trade treaty and how exactly that's impacting the larger, I forget the name of it,
Maquilas.
Maquilas.
Well, they're also called maquiladoras. It's
Yeah.
the same word.
Like what specifically are they citing in these treaties that is crazy?
So the free trade treaties, both NAFTA and CAFTA, and billions of them. So between countries, there's always a policy of duties to be charged. And the book of duties for the United States is about 3,000 pages long. And so it lists all the gazillion kinds of products. So, and how many duties that you pay. So when there's a free trade treaty, it's negotiated that for certain countries and certain products, there's no duty. So that makes it much easier or more cost effective, more profitable to do business with someone in that country. So when that exists, it gave an incentive. An example. So it's on kitchen towels. It's on t-shirts. We all know t-shirts, right? So the t-shirts, you don't have to pay duty between Guatemala and the United States. So companies in Guatemala will send, companies in the United States will have a partner maquila in, most of them, the huge majority of them are in Mexico, doing cars and things like that. But in Guatemala, we have a huge quantity of them as well, primarily in textiles. And so they'll send the materials that they need, whether it's decoration or whatever, and then they'll get made in Guatemala by low-paid workers. I mean, seriously low-paid workers. And then it goes back to the United States. And it works because of the low pay, because it accommodates those two shipping directions. And it's very interesting, this system of duties. Like, I think it would, if you just studied them. I studied them when I have to figure out what the code is to put on our products. Sure. But I know there's, like, then I've learned other things about history or things like that. So if I want to ship, I do want to ship without paying duty. And this Central American Free Trade Agreement allows us to send the vast majority of our products without paying any duty. That's great. So that's an extra cost they don't have to pay. But in order to send the kitchen towels we make, I have to make the sewing thread for those kitchen towels has to be made in North America. So it's a bizarre little book of things. So I'm sure there's a reason for that that has historical basis in politics. But anyway, so did I answer your question?
Yeah, I gave you a lot more insight, I think.
Hmm?
You said you gave me a lot more insight, I think.
Other questions? No?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
So when you found out that the first vendor had the awesome dye in it, from there, did you, like, is there a way to see how they get their certification? Like, are there any standards for it?
The certification looks like it's standard, but I don't know how they got it. Or maybe they had it and then they changed their dyes. I don't really know. But I learned my lesson. Yeah.
So after the after you found out about the azo dye products, did you have to, what's like the, you have the like recall products or,
No, I didn't recall further.
oh, and I was also gonna ask if, sell, domestically in Guatemala.
Yes, we do.
And, but, talk a lot about like shipping in the US, and I'm gonna ask, if it also ships like for places in here.
Oh, the co-op in Guatemala?
Yeah,
Yeah, they have shipped to Europe, to
The asthma diet, are there any other aspects or things you want to avoid with your products to, like, we were talking about that part done was
So the quality control that we do is more physical, aesthetic, right? That the steams are straight, the corners are perfect, things like that. And our products really aren't dangerous. So other than making sure that the dyes are healthy, I don't see a big risk in them. So, and baby wraps, you have to be careful that the baby will be hung in there. So. Although it was an interesting experience because this company that was buying from us had selected a fabric that they liked, and they had it tested, and the fabric that they liked, they had selected two to be tested. One of them looked like it wasn't going to be as strong. So when we investigated it, the weave that was over my head of weaving, but the weave was what you could call an uneven weave. It was like a twill, but instead of being an even twill, it was an uneven twill, and that made it a little weaker. So we wove another fabric that was an even twill in the same colors, and just to address that. But that was something we never thought before. But that's the closest to, well, no, potholders. So people have asked us for what kind of heat that it will withstand. And so I had to go to the company that makes this heat resistant fabric to find out what they said. And so that's what I share as a prevention of the heat. So you're not supposed to put it in a fire, but it should be, protective of your hands when you're pulling things in and out of the fire.
How was your situation last week? Were you able to do it?
Yeah, we have our.
Yeah, sorry, it was very snowy here. So,
Was it really?
yeah, we-
In the morning.
Really?
I was thinking of you that day.
Yeah.
Well, it was snowing in the morning, but in the afternoon I went off to the thing. It was good. It was a lot of fun. There was a lot of people and a lot of good energy. And good food. Yeah.
So, what's the politics like between the maquilas and the, traditional weavers? I mean, is there tension? Is there, like, do people recognize and talk about like, oh, this was made in a factory and it's not as good? Or I know they're probably a little bit cheaper. And,
It's not-
and also, like, and also it's like, is there that kind of sensibility? And also, is there, like, do you have any tension within the community, like people that have to go and work there, or they have to take in work? I know some people, take
So
in
the-
work.
So maquilas, so we don't have any maquilas here, but people do go to live in the capital so they can work in a maquila. And they don't like it because it's horrible, but it's work,
Yeah.
right? So it's that trade-off. And so our weavers don't have any sense of relation with maquilas, but what you're speaking about is more there's a lot of factories that have come in to do printed fabrics to be printed in the patterns that look like they're maquilas, and they're cheap. And so that's a stress for the weavers who do making clothes in the traditional way. So I would call that more cultural, that
Yeah.
in that vein of things. And so, yeah, that's a problem. That's a problem. But the Mikila thing is more of a like, it's something.
It is, sure, with you. Yeah. What, can I ask one more? What, the other thing I was interested in hearing a little more about is the cultural, the, the criticism, the idea, like, how did Blanca negotiate that? Do you remember any stories about that, or what people, how it changed people?
I don't know how she did it. All I can tell you is one day she came to me and she's like, wow, I'm so happy. Listen what I did. And she said, I went to the weavers, got them all together and showed them this scarf. This scarf, look at how short it is. I'm accepting this now. They all said, okay. She was really proud of herself. I really don't know how she did it. I mean, I didn't get to watch it. I just know. I know. Well, I saw parts of it because I had to support her a lot of times and I still do. So I got called in. I don't remember if it was in January, but I got. Okay, the seamstress says you accept this. I had to call in that big meeting. So they came to see. The seamstresses tell us you accept this, and now you don't. Yeah, I got called into a big conference, and we had to talk about what it was. The problem, this particular problem, it is hard because when they have, they receive a mold of cloth, what's acceptable and what's not. And so my thing is, if you're a seamstress, your job is to look at the cloth and make sure don't sew it with an error in it. So that's your job. Like you can reject the fabric, and then this is up the weaver. But anyway, that's it. It's not that clear. That's why all these standards make it more and more clearly. Okay, it can be that it's only one. It's like, oh no, but there's three every five, there's 3 errors in a row here, so now we have to take that out. But it is that we really want them to be earning money, but we can't sell it if it's not good quality. So it's, how do you do it? Yeah.
Your upcoming trip.
Yeah.
Is because you mentioned that it was short, is it like a problem solving trip? Or
It's just short because of my lecture series every couple.
I just wasn't sure if you were implementing any changes or starting a new project.
I already created habit equipment there. No, I usually go every 2 or 3 months, and I was there in January. And it just happens, the last time I created habit, because I did it a lot. I usually like to do it, I'm not a part of the operation and go there. So when I'm there, I like to meet with different people, see what's going on. I do try and do projects. We're building a new school, it's our big project, so I'm hoping to meet with the architect and see. That's that standpoint. And then it turns out that the gentleman with businesses, the new guy or the new vendor of yarn, he's coming to meet all of the people in the organization. So I will, by Wednesday, be there for that. And they're bringing in, we farm out work to a cooperative of other Brooklyn weavers, and they're coming in to have a get together, like a social yarn. So I'll be there for that. So I feel I'll be very busy in that time. But I usually do it just touch base with everybody and make my comments and see what's going on. And you can see things better than just, we get great communications now on WhatsApp. I'm in contact with everybody all the time. However, just being there and seeing things is also there. And so I look forward to it. And I have one more job to do that is actually a day-to-day kind of thing because I haven't yet gotten the finance coordinator for my mom off of the accounting system she's on, which is in English, into one that's Spanish. So I'm hoping to make significant progress on that. I did significant progress when I was there in January. I was hoping this would be the last time I could do it, but I don't think it's going to be. So that's my only day-to-day thing. So, some pause, I got a question.
So you had mentioned how now that women are making their wages and they were able to support themselves with people savings, but they were also giving back to the community by hiring people to help in certain ways. But you also have a good part. Have you seen how the women, do you feel like they're now able to give back to their community and be able to help the local economy?
So by having wages, that helps the local economy. And one thing I love to watch is every day a lady arrives at 10 o'clock with their morning snack, which is, it's just a healthy, I mean, substantial snack. So that woman is earning money from coming and selling to us every day. But the giving back to the community, so I talked in the beginning about Grupo Kapala, and so everybody is also a member of Grupo Kapala. So some of the women are members of the board of directors of Grupo Kapala. Their kids are in the preschool or the after-school learning, and they're involved in all the projects we do. And so one thing we do in the spring is reforesting. We do planting of saplings in the woods. So everybody goes on that. So the whole idea of Grupo Kapala is giving back to the community. So I feel that, so normally a cooperative by itself is supposed to give back to the community, but I think all the work that they do is integrated with Grupo Kapala. That kind of giving back.
What's the name of your Etsy? Are you selling on Etsy?
That wasn't us,
That was the McKellar?
I'm on the first.
we sold on Etsy years ago. We actually got kicked off of Etsy. They said that we were not there, we were not complying with their rules. And they said the rule is we're supposed to have a designer in the States and artisans in another country, which is exactly what we were. But we didn't succeed in finding a human to talk to the architect.
Oh,
Wow.
amazing.
Wow.
Anyway, so that Etsy was next week we're gonna, was it? I know, that was for my read for next week. Oh, fair pay.
Oh,
Fair
okay.
pay. That's
Oh,
an
yeah.
Etsy site that is nameless, that's selling, we feel, at way too cheap.
Mhm.
So that's what we're gonna talk about. That's all. Ours is long. Nothing else today. I didn't strike your friend. Okay.
Leave some for next time. Leave something for next time.
So you're gonna get an earful next time, fair pay.
Oh,
Okay, thank you.
so